Good morning, students. I am Dr. Anju Balaji More, Professor in the Department of Anatomy at Sri Lakshmi Narayan Institute of Medical Sciences under Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research, Chennai. In today's class, we will discuss about the anatomy of face and the facial muscles. The face is the presenting part of a person, and the muscles of face play an important role in the facial expressions, which are an important way of communication in the day-to-day life. The class will include the blood supply and nerve supply of face, the action of the muscles. So the objectives which will be covered in the class will be location of the facial muscles, the attachment and function of these muscles, the blood supply, nerve supply of the face, its lymphatic drainage, and the clinical correlation. The face is defined as from the hairline and inferiorly to the chin at the base of the mandible. On each side, it is extending up to the auricles. The forehead is the area which is common for both face and the skull. The layers of face include first, the skin. The skin of face is thick with a very rich blood supply as compared to other body parts. This characteristic of the skin of face helps in rapid healing, as well as it also results in reduction of the scar tissue after healing. The superficial fascia of face contain muscles, vessels, and nerves of the face area. The main function of the muscles of face is to control the apertures of facial sensory organs which are present in on the face, such as the eyes, ears, nose, and the tongue inside the oral cavity. The absence of deep fascia in most areas in the face allows the facial expression, which are the byproduct of contraction of these muscles. The skin of the face has rich vascular supply. This rich vascularity of the skin can be appreciated in light colored persons when they are exposed to excess adrenaline rush, and it can be seen as blush and blanch. The wounds of the face bleed profusely, but they also have rapid healing because of the presence of rich blood supply. The results of plastic surgery are also excellent on face. The facial skin is having a more number of sebaceous glands and sweat glands. The sebaceous gland secretions in the form of sebum keeps the skin oily, but any blockage of these glands will help in the growth of bacteria and result in acne, which are more common in the puber adolescents. The sweat glands also help to regulate the body temperature. The eyelids, which are on the skin, are regulated by the muscle called orbicularis oculi. The orbicularis oculi muscle is one of the facial muscle which is around the eye. It has a palpebral portion. The attachment is to the orbital septum and tarsal plates. It also covers the meibomian glands. The medial palpebral ligament anchor the tarsal plates to the anterior lacrimal crest. The fold of the skin which forms the eyelid also holds a sac which is present in front of the sclera and is known as conjunctival sac. So in this diagram here, we can see the eyelid skin is removed. What we see here are the tarsal plate. So this is the superior tarsal plate. This is the inferior tarsal plate. In the cross section, we can see the muscles which are present. So this muscle which is in the eyelid is orbicularis oculi. When we reflect the eyelid here as seen in this diagram, we can see this sac and this is the conjunctival sac. So there is a superior conjunctival sac and also a inferior conjunctival sac. The next muscle that we will discuss is levator palpebris superioris. As the name suggests, the muscle elevates the superior eyelid. So the muscle that elevates superior eyelid is levator palpebris superioris. It originates from the back of the roof of orbit and is attached to the skin of the upper eyelid. So here in the upper eyelid, we can see the levator palpebris superioris fibers. The muscle is attached to superior tarsal plate and thus it will be protecting as well as regulating the superior fornix of the conjunctiva. The levator palpebris superioris primary function is to elevate the upper eyelid. This particular muscle has also got few smooth muscle fibers which are not under voluntary control. The voluntary controlled part of the muscle is supplied by third oculomotor nerve or the third cranial nerve, that is the oculomotor nerve. Whereas the smooth muscles of the levator palpebris superioris have a sympathetic innervation which is arising from the superior cervical ganglion at T1. The involuntary part of the levator palpebris superioris is functionally acting when the person is blinking involuntarily. The action of blinking, which is an involuntary action, occurs several times in a minute and this helps to spread the tears in a thin film over the sclera. The thin film of the fluid layer in the sclera helps to keep the cornea moist as well as maintain its transparency for the vision. It also helps to keep the eyes clean and offer a function protection to the eyeball. The lacrimal apparatus is situated in the eye, which is related to the secretion of the tear as well as its drainage. When the secretions are excess, the apparatus consists of a lacrimal gland, which are located in the upper lateral part of the eyeball in the superior conjunctival sac. The tears are released into the superior conjunctival sac from where they are spread over the sclera because of the action of blinking. The excess tear will enter into the punctum which are present at the medial canthus of the eye. From there, they are drained with a canaliculi into a nasolacrimal sac which is present in the lacrimal fossa on the medial side of the eye. The lacrimal fossa is present here. The further drainage of the tear fluid from the lacrimal sac is via the lacrimal duct which runs in the lateral wall of the nose and it opens in the inferior meatus of the nose. Here you can see the opening of the nasolacrimal duct. Below the inferior concha in the inferior meatus of the nose. That is why the excess tear which are secreted when we eat spicy food or when we have strong emotions, the tears will come to our nose. Now the rest of the muscles are also called the muscles of facial expression because, as we discussed earlier, the contraction of these muscles as a result of our emotions or during our communication, they lead to various facial expressions. Embryologically, the facial muscles develop from the mesoderm of second branchial arch, and thus the nerve of the second branchial arch, facial nerve, supply all the muscles of the face. The facial muscles are thin, flat muscles. They have one attachment to the dermis of the skin. They have considerable individual variation and they often blend with each other. In a relaxed skin, the tension lines run perpendicular to the direction of muscle fibers, and these tension lines can also be seen very prominently in the form of wrinkles. So in this diagram, we can see different facial muscles. So this is the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis, and this is the occipital belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle. They are joined together by the epicranial aponeurosis. Around the eyeball, there is orbicularis oculi. At the root of the nose, there is procerus and the corrugated supercilium. At the opening of nasal cavity, there is compressor and dilator nares. Around the ear, we can see there are three muscles. As per their position, they are labeled as auricularis superior, auricularis posterior, and auricularis anterior. Around the oral cavity, the muscles, they regulate the opening and closing of the lips as well as they regulate the movement of the oral opening. These muscles are the risorius. The muscle that is surrounding the oral opening is orbicularis oris. Other muscles are the levator labii superioris alicunae, the levator labii superioris, zygomaticus minor, zygomaticus major, risorius, mentalis, depressor labii inferioris, depressor anguli oris. The muscle that extends from the chin onto the skin of neck is platysma. So first we will discuss about the muscles that are located around the orbit. The muscle which are present are frontalis. The frontalis muscle is the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis. It elevates the eyebrows. The procerus is the muscle which is located more medially and towards the root of the nose. It depresses the eyebrow. The corrugated supercilium also depress the brows. The orbicularis oculi is a muscle which is circularly placed around the eye and it closes the eye as well as the depresses the brow. The orbicularis oculi has three parts. The orbital part originates from medial part of medial palpebral ligament and from concentric rings which are returning to the point of their origin. The action of orbital part is closure of the eyelids tightly. The palpebral part originates from lateral part of the medial palpebral ligament and is inserted into the lateral palpebral raphe. Its action is the closure of eyelids in a gentle manner. The lacrimal part of the orbicularis oculi originate from lacrimal fascia and lacrimal bone. The lacrimal part is inserted in upper and lower tarsi. Its action is to dilate the lacrimal sac. In this diagram, we can see the orbicularis oculi muscle. The contraction of the orbicularis oculi makes the conjunctival sac smaller. The finer palpebral portion of the eyelid is regulated by the palpebral part of the muscle. They are present anterior to the tarsal plate. The next group of muscle is located around the nasal aperture. So these muscles are the nasalis. There are two muscles in the by the name nasalis. One is compressor and nasalis, and the other one is dilator nasalis. The next muscle is depressor septi nasi, which is present at the lower part of the nasal septum. The levator labii superioris alecunasi is the muscle which runs from the upper lip by the side of the nose. It dilates the nostril as well as elevates the upper lip. The muscles around the oral cavity can be divided into three groups. The first group is one which is inserted into the modulus, that is a crossing of the muscles of face just lateral to the angle of the mouth, which is located here. The muscles included in this group are orbicularis oris. The fibers run around the oral opening. Their function is to close the mouth. The buccinator acts to press the lips and the cheeks together. The rhizoreus draws the commissures laterally. So the muscle is running on the lateral side of the lip. The levator anguli oris elevates the angle of the lip upwards. The depressor anguli oris, the fibers run downward from the angle of mouth and they depress the lateral commissure of the mouth downwards. The zygomaticus major runs from the angle of the mouth and upper lip towards the zygomatic bone. When it contracts, it elevates the mouth and also move the the oral commissure laterally. The second group of muscles are elevated the upper lip and they are inserted in the upper lip. They include the levator labii superioris, which elevates the lip. Medial to it is a thin muscle, which is levator labii superioris alecunasi. It dilates the nostril as well as elevates the upper lip. The third muscle is zygomaticus minor. The muscle elevates and pull the commissure of the mouth laterally, and it also contributes to the nasolabial fold. The third group of muscle is located at the lower lip and is inserted into the lower lip. These include the depressor labii inferioris. Here we can see the fibers. So the action of this muscle will depress the lateral angle of the commissure downwards. The mentalis elevates the lower lip and is present towards the center. Running from the lower lip onto the chin and then in the skin of the neck is the platysma, a thin muscle which is just subcutaneous in position in the neck. This muscle depress the lower lip. So in the next diagram again, we can see the depressor labii inferioris, mentalis, and the platysma. The next muscle that we discuss is buccinator. The buccinator has three sets of fibers. The upper fibers are originating from maxilla opposite the molar teeth. They are inserted in upper lip. The lower set of fibers are originating from mandible opposite the molar teeth and are inserted in lower lip, whereas the middle fibers are originating from pterygomandibular raphe and are inserted as they decussate to the lip. The decussation of the buccinator fiber is overlapping at the point of modulus. The contraction of the buccinator muscle prevents accumulation of food in the vestibule of the mouth. The platysma is the muscle which is extending onto the neck. It releases the pressure of the skin on the subcutaneous vessels, especially the subcutaneous veins in the neck. As it depresses the mandible, it pulls the angle of the mouth downwards. Now we will discuss the nerve supply of the face. The skin of the face receives its sensory nerve supply by the branches of trigeminal nerve, except for the skin which is covering the angle of mandible and is supplied by great auricular nerve. Whereas the motor supply of the face, which is responsible for nerve supply to all the facial muscles, except the levator palpebris superioris. The levator palpebris superioris receives its nerve supply from the third cranial nerve, that is oculomotor nerve. The sensory supply is via the ophthalmic, maxillary, and the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. The ophthalmic division gives branches such as supratrochlear, supraorbital, palpebral branch of the lacrimal, infratrochlear, and external nasal. The maxillary division of the mandibular nerve, which is the fifth cranial nerve, gives three branches on the skin for the skin of face. These are zygomaticofacial and zygomaticotemporal, supplying to the skin over the zygoma, and infraorbital. The mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve gives three branches. One is mental nerve, second is the buccal nerve, and the third one is the oculomotor nerve. So in this diagram, we can see the nerves which are supplying to the face. This diagram shows the facial nerve entering onto the face along the posterior surface of the parotid gland. It divides into its branches within the substance of the parotid gland, and we can see the branches reaching out to the different areas of face. The temporal branch towards the temporal region, the zygomatic branch supplying to the supplying to the muscles which are over the zygoma, the upper and lower buccal branches from the buccal nerve toward to the muscles which are around the oral cavity, and the cervical branch towards the neck, whereas a mandibular branch over the base of the mandible. So all these branches of the facial nerve supply to the skin, the skin, the skin muscles which are originating and are inserted into the face. The sensory supply, we have already seen these nerves in the earlier diagram. So these are the branches of the ophthalmic. The area which is colored in orange in this diagram is the area of face which is receiving its sensory supply from the ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve. The next area here supplied by the zygomaticofacial and the zygomaticotemporal and the infraorbital nerve, which are the branches of the maxillary division of trigeminal, is shown in the gray color, whereas the area supplied by the mandibular division is shown in the pink color, whereas the rest of the area of face shown here in the blue color is supplied by the branches from the cervical plexus. The facial nerve is motor and it supplies to muscle posterior auricular to occipital belly, the posterior belly of digastric. We have also enumerated the branches which are present at the anterior border of the parotid gland. To remember these branches, the hand can be placed across the face. So the fingers, 5 fingers will represent the 5 branches of the facial nerve, which are supplying to the muscles of the face. The facial nerve will be affected in stroke, as well as the upper motor neuron of the facial nerve will be affected in the lesion of the facial nerve nucleus. In this kind of pathology, the forehead is spared because of dual nerve supply. So wrinkles can be seen on the forehead. All the other muscles on the side of the paralysis will be showing the signs of paralysis. It is the sign of lower motor neuron type of paralysis which is seen in Bell's palsy. The facial nerve muscles have significant variability in the course as well as the innervation pattern will be overlapping with in the adjacent muscles. The nerve supply of individual muscle is enumerated here. The temporalis muscle is okay. First, let us go by the muscles of region wise. So first we will go to the forehead muscles. The facial muscles in the forehead, the frontalis is supplied by the temporal branch of the facial nerve. The procerus and corrugator supercilia will receive their nerve supply by temporal, zygomatic and buccal nerve. The orbicularis oculi through the temporal and zygomatic nerve. The muscles of nose, the nasalis, is receiving its blood nerve supply from zygomatic and buccal nerve, and depressor septi muscle and levator labii superioris alephinae through the buccal nerve. The muscles around the lip, most of them are supplied by buccal nerve, and in addition, the orbicularis oris also receive nerve supply through the marginal mandibular branch, buccinator through the zygomatic branch. The zygomatic branch also supply to levator anguli oris and the zygomaticus major. Now, the muscles in the lower lip, they are supplied by the mandibular branch as well as the buccal branch. So the depressor labii inferioris and the mentalis and platysma will be supplied by these two nerves. Now we will discuss the blood supply of the face. The blood supply is derived from external carotid artery, and its branches which supply to the face are facial artery and the superficial temporal artery. So in this diagram, we can see the facial artery in its tortuous course running across the face. The internal carotid artery branches which reach to supply the face are branches of ophthalmic division. They are supraorbital and the supratrochlear branch which come onto the face at the upper margin of the orbital foramen. So in this diagram, we can see the facial artery arising as a branch of external carotid artery. The facial artery has a tortuous course, and this tortuosity helps in the free movement of the skin of the face as well as facilitates the action of facial muscles. It gives the lower buccal and upper buccal branch at the lower and upper lip respectively. Then it runs along the lateral side of nose to the medial canthus of the eye. The second branch, which is the terminal branch of the external carotid artery, is the superficial temporal nerve. It runs along the temporal region and supplies to the skin over the temple of the face. So, diagram shows the tortuous course of the face and the branches which are given in the face. The venous drainage of the face is through the common facial vein, which is running parallel to the facial vein here, and the retromandibular vein. The deep connections of the facial vein are with the supraorbital and superior ophthalmic vein. It communicates with the pterygoid plexus of vein, which is present in the inframandibular fossa, and through it the communication also pass to the cavernous sinus. The cavernous sinus is communicating with the superficial facial veins through the superior ophthalmic vein as well as the pterygoid plexus of vein in the infratemporal fossa. So the blood from the face is drained via supratrochlear and the supraorbital vein, which drain into anterior facial vein. The maxillary region and the temporal region drains into retromandibular vein. The retromandibular vein further divide into anterior and posterior division. The anterior division of retromandibular vein joins with anterior facial vein to form common facial vein, which further drains into internal jugular vein. Whereas the posterior division of retromandibular vein joins with posterior auricular vein. Together they form the external jugular vein and it terminates into subclavian vein. The occipital veins drain into suboccipital venous plexus. The emissary veins communicate the cavernous sinus, which is a deep situated sinus within the substance of brain. This communication is via superior ophthalmic vein as well as the pterygoid plexus vein. This communication of the superficial facial veins with the cavernous sinus expose the cavernous sinus to the infections which are very common in the dangerous area of face. The dangerous area of face includes the tip of the nose and the upper lip area. The parietal emissary veins of the scalp also communicate the facial veins with the superior sagittal sinus. The lymphatic drainage of the face is into the submental nodes located here, the submandibular nodes, the buccal and the mandibular nodes, the preauricular nodes, and the occipital nodes. The names of the lymph nodes are as per their location. The lymphatic drainage is divided into three categories. The upper territory drains into preauricular lymph nodes. So the area that drains into preauricular lymph nodes will be forehead, lateral half of eyelid, conjunctiva, and lateral part of cheek and parotid area. The middle territory drains into submandibular lymph nodes, whereas the lower part of face drains into submental group of lymph nodes. The nerve supply, which is the sensory nerve to the face, the trigeminal nerve is affected by trigeminal neuralgia. Its maxillary and mandibular division are involved, and it leads to excruciating pain in the region of the distribution of nerve. The infranuclear lesion of the facial nucleus leads to the Bell's palsy. The lower part of the nerve is affected and the whole face is paralyzed. So the affected side will be motionless with loss of wrinkles. The eyes cannot close. The tears will drool onto the face. The smiling of the face, mouth will be drawn to the normal side, and mastication of food while eating, the food will accumulate in the vestibule of mouth. The supranuclear lesion of the facial nerve, there will be lower paralysis of the lower part of face, whereas the upper part of the face over forehead will be spared because of dual nerve supply. So this picture shows the Bell's palsy. The affected region is on this side. You can see the loss of wrinkles, dropping of the eyelid, dropping of the angle of mouth. This picture, the child, this side is affected because of the Bell's palsy. The corneal reflex will be lost in case of the lesion. The afferent ciliary branch, which are the nasociliary branch of ophthalmic division of the trigeminal, will be affected. The efferent motor nerve supply is affected and the corneal reflex will be lost. The dangerous area of face is shown in this diagram, and the infection from this area can be passed on to the cavernous sinus due to its communication with the superficial veins. These communicating veins lack the wall, and that also facilitates the transmission of infection. In the Horner syndrome, there is ptosis, dropping of eyelid as we can see on this side, miosis, constriction of pupil, anhidrosis or loss of sweating on the affected side, and enophthalmos, that is the size of the eyeball will get sunken into the orbit. That size of the eyeball will be reduced. So this is about the face, its muscles, blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatic drainage, and the applied or clinical anatomy. So if you have any queries, you can ask. Okay, students, thank you for your kind attention. Now we conclude this class.